The Bible and aliens, how the Bible confirms the existence of extraterrestrials. Is the biblical God an alien? This question may seem absurd at first glance, but a detailed analysis of the biblical scriptures could provide a surprising insight. Bible verses, theological interpretations, and ancient myths intertwine to create a fascinating narrative that suggests a connection between divinity and otherworldly beings. This revolutionary theory not only challenges traditional understandings of faith, but also opens up discussions about the role of alien gods in human history. Various biblical passages mention the sons of God and references to the God of gods, suggesting a divine hierarchy that resembles the relationships between humans and higher, possibly extraterrestrial beings. For example, the descriptions of the chariot of fire in Elijah's ascension to heaven can be interpreted as advanced technology not understood by the people of those times. In addition to biblical references, many ancient cultures speak of gods coming from the heavens, sharing knowledge and technology with humans. These parallel narratives reinforce the idea that relationships between humans and divinity may be more complex than previously thought. In addition, apocryphal texts such as the Book of Enoch provide additional details about the sons of heaven interacting with humanity, further fueling speculation about the extraterrestrial origins of the biblical deity. In the modern scientific context, this theory is supported by the continued search by astronomers and researchers for extraterrestrial life. The discovery of habitable exoplanets and studies of dark matter and energy add weight to the idea that the universe is full of possibilities for the existence of other intelligent life forms that may be related to our ancient stories of gods and creators. The biblical God as alien debate is not just a discussion of faith and science, it is also an exploration of how we understand the origin and purpose of humanity in the vastness of the cosmos. This theory prompts us to broaden our perspective and ask fundamental questions about our place in the universe and possible connections to civilizations beyond Earth. In conclusion, the idea that the biblical God could be an alien opens up new territory for research and contemplation. It not only challenges traditional interpretations of sacred texts, but also encourages dialogue between faith, history, science, and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. As we explore this theory further, we come closer to understanding the true nature of the universe and our role in it. Although it may seem meaningless, this title hides a truth that those interested in keeping humanity in the dark will never recognize. How could anyone dare to say such an enormity? What connection can Jehovah, the biblical God, have with aliens? In these lines, I just want to highlight a part of the verses that glorify the position of master of the biblical God over the rest of the gods. He was not and is not alone, as the church wants us to believe, but the master of mankind and other alien gods like him. In the Bible, there are hundreds of paragraphs that confirm Jehovah's connection with these gods. For those who do not know anything from this book, it is difficult for them to associate their names with the names of religious entities. The gods were beings who did not belong to the earth, but who lived on this earth together with man. They had a supreme leader, who in myths always has different names, because when he died or was defeated in battle by another god, he became the absolute master of the two worlds, that of humans and that of the gods. If the elite teach us, for example, that Uranus was Jupiter or Saturn or Zeus, this actually hides their death. They died like any mortal, but those who took their place occupied the same rank that the previous one had. In the case of the mentioned deities, each of them were at their time absolute bosses of the other gods. The place of these gods was taken in the Bible by God. Each god or god had a people or a nation of his own. But the God or absolute God was the master of all. For example, Anu was the supreme god of the Sumerians who had two sons, Enlil and Enki. Anu was the absolute God, the great master of all the kingdoms and nations of the earth and the sky. Enlil was the god of the sky and Enki the god of the earth. These gods, who were the supreme leaders of the various nations of gods and men, received the name of gods in the Bible. Each god also had leaders who led his people. They were called angels, seraphim, cherubim, or demons in the Bible. These brilliant minds that have built for centuries only lies, negativity, and evil have modified the human body and the existing earthly beings, proclaiming themselves creators. Today's man is truly their work, the mirror in which they look to see how wicked and selfish they are. Now I think you understand better why all the ancient world was a slave to the gods, not by any means suckers of painted wood, rotting corpses, or trees in the shape of crosses. The scientific world and the church do not want to confirm this, not because it is not true, but because if they admitted such a thing, both religious doctrines and their great science would disappear like smoke. As with humans, the gods were divided into those who did the will of the supreme God and those who did not want to please him. To make man accept their supremacy, the gods invented all kinds of traps and vile situations aided by their destructive technology. Then, as today, only through trickery and lies were they able to keep the man in check and escape the disaster he would have caused. This host of spirits never lived in heaven because heaven was not and is not their home, but they lived on earth. To document once again the fact that the Bible is an adaptation of the ancient texts to the future monotheistic doctrine, but also that God was not alone on earth, I chose a series of significant paragraphs that confirm my words. Deuteronomy 10-172, that your God is the God of gods. Exodus 20-3, you shall have no other gods besides me. Psalms 81-1, God sat in the divine assembly, and in the midst of the gods he will judge. Psalms 81-6, holy gods and all sons of the Most High. Psalms 95-4, how great is God, above all gods. Psalms 96-7, before him all the gods are crucified. Deuteronomy 32-17, they sacrificed to demons and not to him God, to new gods whom they did not know, who came from their neighbors and whom their fathers did not know. Daniel 4-5, and finally appeared my forefather Daniel, whose name is Balthazar in the name of my God. So, when the populace and their absurd doctrine will tell you that God is the one and only God, grin at them like puppies at a pot of treats. If you are curious, you can search for yourself in the Bible to convince yourself that God is the leader of all gods. The gods are neither angels, nor seraphim, nor cherubim, but the leaders of peoples and lesser gods. It is somewhat like today. Each state has a president who submits to the supreme power, namely the Vatican. In the following paragraphs, it is emphasized once again who holds the supreme power both over the gods and over the people, but also the fact that each people of the people was ruled by an angel. In other words, angels are lesser gods who were the leaders of peoples. They gave an account to the God who led them about the people over whom they were chiefs. Deuteronomy 10-17, that the Lord your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords, great and mighty and wonderful God, who does not look for face, nor takes a bribe. Deuteronomy 32-8, when the Most High divided the inheritance among the peoples, when he divided the sons of Adam, then he established the borders of the nations according to the number of God's angels. Deuteronomy 6-4, hear, Israel, the Lord our God is the only Lord. Daniel 2-47, the king answered Daniel and said, truly your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings, the discoverer of mysteries, for you were able to discover this mystery. Judges 11-13. Then the children of Israel began to do evil in the eyes of the Lord and began to serve the Baals. They left the Lord God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and turned to other gods, to the gods of the peoples around them, and began to worship them and angered the Lord. They left the Lord and began to worship Baal and Ashtoreth. This choleric god of the Jews was terrified at the thought that people did not listen to him and did not recognize him as absolute master. For this reason, they always go into fits of furious madness if they cross the side of the other gods or gods. The god with whom he was always in competition because man loved him more than him was Baal. Quoted 63 times in the Bible as a deity to whom the Jewish people always remain faithful, the temple in Shechem is dedicated to Baal. Romans 11-4, but what does the divine answer say? I set aside 7,000 men who did not bow the knee to Baal. In Numbers 25, 1-5, Moabite women are mentioned who lure the Jewish people away from worshiping God to join the worship of Baal Peor. In the third book of Kings 18-40, it is specified that there are hundreds of prophets of Baal and Asherah, while the prophet of God was only Elijah. As every time, those who did not like this killer god were passed into the eternal world because he, although omnipotent, did not suffer competition and was afraid of those who made his people move away from him. And Elijah said to Ahab, I am not the one who brings disaster on Israel, but you and your father's house, because you have left the commandments of the Lord and follow the Baals. Send now and gather all Israel to me on Mount Carmel, together with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table." Then Elijah approached all the people and said, "How long will you be lame in both legs? If the Lord is God, follow him. And if it is Baal, follow him." But the people did not answer anything. And Elijah said to the people, "I alone am the prophet of the Lord, and the prophets of Baal are 450 men, and the prophets of Asherah 400. Baal was an ancient deity who lived before the biblical god Jehovah or the Sumerian Enlil. For this reason the peoples followed him. The Jews borrowed the cults and culture of the peoples they lived among. Thus they took over many knowledge of the Egyptians, where they stayed for more than 400 years. The bull god was present in Egypt under the name of Apis or the Apis bull, and throughout the Middle East he was considered the image of Baal and Jehovah. In Canaan, Enlil is described as the ancient father of people, and his images as the bull god are called in the Bible cattle, referring to Jehovah. Exodus 1-5. But when the people saw that Moses was slow to come down from the mountain, they gathered to Aaron and said to him, "Get up and make us gods to go before us, because with this man, with Moses, who brought us out from the land of Egypt, we do not know what happened." And Aaron said to them, "Take the gold earrings from the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me." He carved it with a chisel. And they said, "Behold, Israel, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." Seeing this, Aaron built an altar before him, and Aaron cried out and said, "Tomorrow is the feast of the Lord." King Jeroboam makes 2 golden calves in the temples of Dan and Bethel, and the people worship them, as they did in the time of Aaron, when the calf represented the God who brought them out of Egypt. And taking counsel, the king made 2 golden calves and said to the people, "You don't have to go to Jerusalem anymore. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." And he put one in Bethel and the other in Dan. In a Ugaritic culture text, Jehovah appears as the son of the god Enlil. There is a quote referring to this aspect also in Genesis, when Jacob bought from Shechem's father a piece of land where he pitched his tent and erected an altar to God with the name El Elo Israel. Elo comes from Eloah, which means divinity, with the plural Elohim, which means deities. He is Enlil, Enki's brother. In translation it would be, El, the divinity of Israel, Genesis 33-20. He erected an altar there and named it El Elo Israel. Asherah is mentioned 6 times in the Bible under the name of Asherah, known as the creator goddess of the Elohim gods. She also appears with the name of Astarte 43 times. She is the ancient goddess Inanna Ishtar, baptized by the Greeks Aphrodite and by the Romans Venus. She was not the goddess of love, as the lying texts of the Greeks teach, but the goddess of sex. This was practiced in ancient times as sacred prostitution, a practice that was also practiced by the Jews, but which was forbidden to them. Deuteronomy 23-17, "There shall not be a harlot among the daughters of Israel, nor a harlot among the sons of Israel. For these 2 have made their heights, idols and Astartes, on every high hill and under every shady tree. And they were also sodomites in this country, and they did all the wickedness of the pagans, whom the Lord had driven out from before the children of Israel. For he expelled the harlots from the country and removed all the idols that his parents had made for him, and even deprived his mother, Anna, of the name of queen, because she had made an image of Astarte. This is how Asa smashed the cast image of Astarte by burning it on the banks of the Chedron stream. And the remnant of the harlots that remained from the days of his father Asa, he eradicated from the country. Then they tore down the brothels that were near the Lord's temple, where the women kept garments for Astarte. Astarte, alias Inanna, was however revered and honored by the Jewish people with the name Queen of Heaven. All peoples worshipped her as the mother of life, and the moment they stopped commemorating her, evil, misery, and lack began to appear. The Jews, as we have seen, did not despise and obey Jehovah except out of fear. When their places of worship for her and the other ancient gods were destroyed, the Jews suffered enormously and never agreed with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jeremiah 17-18, Do you not see what they are doing in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, and the parents kindle the fire, and the women knead the dough to make cakes for the goddess of the sky, and to make castings in honor of other gods, to hurt me. Jeremiah 17-19. But we will do all that we have promised with our mouth. We will burn incense to the goddess of heaven, and we will make sacrifices for her with pouring, as we also did before, and our fathers, our kings and our elders in our cities Judah and on the streets of Jerusalem, because then we were full and happy and saw no misfortunes. And since we ceased to burn incense to the goddess of the sky and to make sacrifices to her with pouring, we suffer all the privations and perish by the sword and by hunger. And the women added, when we were burning incense to the goddess of heaven and making offerings to her, did we, without the knowledge of our men, make her cakes with her image and make offerings to her? Then King Josiah commanded Hilkiah the high priest, the priests of the second rank, and those who stood guard at the threshold, to remove from the temple of the Lord all the things made for Baal, for Ashtoreth, and for all the host of heaven, and to burn them outside Jerusalem, in the valley of Kidron, and their ashes to Bethel. After that he drove out the priests of the idols whom the kings of Judah had placed to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and around Jerusalem, and who burned incense to Baal, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the host of heaven. Then they tore down the brothels that were near the Lord's temple, where the women kept garments for a start. Then the king defiled the two heights in front of Jerusalem, on the right of the Mount of Olives, which Solomon, king of Israel, had made for a start, the idol of Sidon, for Chemosh, the idol of Moab, and for Milcom, the idol of the Ammonites. And he slew on the altars all the priests of the high places that were there. He burned human bones on the altars, and then he returned to Jerusalem. The gods were creatures in flesh and blood, as I have shown you so far. In order to further strengthen this truth hidden by populism, I am going to add an extremely interesting paragraph. These lines confirm the non-existence of ghosts, lures, and heavenly ghosts. Genesis 1-2. And after the people began to multiply on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, seeing that the daughters of men were beautiful, chose from among them their wives, whomever they wanted. At that time, giants lived on the earth, especially since the sons of God began to go into the daughters of men, and they began to bear them sons. These are the heralded valiant men of old. How indoctrinated do you have to be to admit with extraordinary ease that spirits unite with the daughters of man who give birth to their sons? It is true that in this paragraph the angels are called sons of God, but as God is a ghost, so are his sons. So, these sons of God who arrive on earth cannot be other than some of the angels with whom Lucifer came down to earth to receive his kingdom. In order to be able to sexually unite with man, they incarnated, just as man also incarnates in order to reach this prison without bars. As here he is only a slave, a guinea pig for the experiments of the master and his staff, the angels got down to business. In their great intelligence, what did they think? Let's start doing some experiments with this human race. Let's see what comes out. After they deceived the girls of the people and entered their beds, these gods are frightened by what they have done. They realized the proportions of the disaster when the hybrids resulting from these genetically incompatible unions began in their dementia to threaten the entire creation. God and his garrisons decide that man must pay for this deed. That's why they decide to destroy everything that exists on earth with the power of the waters. They will never admit that they did something wrong, but they come up with a brilliant idea to save them. Then they decide the total destruction of life with the great flood, accusing man of connivance against nature. Genesis 5-7. But when the Lord God saw that the wickedness of men had increased on earth, and that all the thoughts and desires of their hearts were directed to evil all the days, God felt sorry and repented that he had made man on earth. And the Lord said, I will destroy from the face of the earth the man I made. From man to beast and from creeping things to birds of the air, I will still lose, for I am sorry that I made them. In other words, the almighty bastard had no idea in advance what his creatures would do, nor did he ever dream of the disastrous consequences. He was 100% ignorant, but he becomes an ungrateful liar when he decides to put the deed of his gods on the back of the ignorant man. This is why priest stories mislead man and make him feel guilty to the core for something he did not do. These few lines were copied from the writings of Enoch and have immense value because with them some amazing truths can be demonstrated. These sons of God were not spirits, but creatures in flesh and bones who came down to earth in their chariots of fire, that is, and spaceships. It is interesting that in no ancient book does it say that their coming here would have benefited humanity in any way. The super-technological gods did not help man, but from the beginning they behaved like masters. That's why it seemed normal to them to sexually abuse the women and girls of the people who gave birth to their spoiled sons. These children were not ordinary beings, but hybrids. Enoch tells about them that they were demented of infernal size, who ate their parents and everything they met alive on earth. These hybrids turned out to be a tragic cross between two physically similar but genetically different breeds. In many writings they appear under the name of demigods, but these were not the heroes of antiquity, as many believe. At that time, giants lived on earth who were actually pure people. They were the true heroes of antiquity, by no means these demented giants, because of which Mother Nature drowned their entire creation with the waters of the Great Deluge. All these armies of God's sons, as well as him in person, are in fact flesh and blood beings just like humans. Their appearance could be similar to that of man, but the internal differences of their bodies were not compatible with those of the earth. In this world, no one can manifest himself if he does not possess a body through which he can be seen. So, man's masters became these beings from other worlds who, over time, began to make him believe that they were his creators. For this reason, they managed to impose on them, as a sign of spirituality, of respect for them, the position of a slave, which today's domesticated man thinks is a privilege.